Hello, welcome back. Hello, my name is Matt, and I'm the host of the Tales of the Whoniverse podcast, and we are here tonight to discuss a wonderful little thing tonight called Doctor Who. Firstly, before we go into it, happy, I want to say Who Year's Eve or something, because tonight it's the double bill of the Space Babies as well as The Devil's Court airing on Disney Plus in a couple of hours. But tonight we're stepping back in time to 1988 to a magical time with another Scottish doctor. He has an umbrella. He has a pendant for having his companion blow stuff up with Nitro 9. So if you do not like clowns, if things like the Terrifier of things like It terrify you, the greatest show in the galaxy is definitely not up in your alley. But if it is, please stay with us. But firstly, before we get into the review, hello, Aden, welcome back.
Hello. This time I'm actually well. I'm actually not feeling like death.
Yes, you're not in your General Grievous phase anymore.
Yes, I'm not like...
Yes. And then we welcome back Raven again. Hello, Raven. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello. It's nice being back yet again.
Yes, in your old saying of the wise Slim Shady, guess who's back? Back again. Yes, well, well, enough about that. So tonight, we're taking a little trip back in time to the Psychic Circus at the greatest show in the galaxy, a 4-part story written by Stephen Wyatt. So we're going to do things a little bit differently tonight with the floor. A bit later, we will be doing our best and our worst, but tonight we're going to be opening up a little bit more with the floor here and doing a bit more a general chat about the greatest show. So we can talk about just in general how we feel about the episode, things like what did we enjoy the most, what again could be the music, it could be the cast. I'll give a start to the introduction just to see like how we can start this one. So firstly for me, I've had a fondness of the greatest show in the galaxy since I discovered this season of Doctor Who when I first started watching Sylvester. I felt it had clearly been a very strong episode of 4 parts. How do I look at it? On the whole, it's fun. It's got a really different band of cast in each part of the stories. You have a story about a killer clown, the chief clown. You have a story about Mags the werewolf. You literally have a story about the doctor who is literally forcing Ace into the psychic circus, who absolutely has a clown phobia. A little bit like her predecessor Sarah Jane. It's really a psychological story, but each cast member, there is no small roles in the greatest show in the galaxy. Each part is a featured part. You think, oh, the ringmaster, he's the main villain. No. You think the chief clown's the great villain? No. It's going to be the greatest villain of all. It's 3 big baddies just sat literally just been watching the show the whole time and orchestrating it. The Gods of Ragnarok. I think for a story of its time, it's funny, it's witty, it's got great stunts, great action. The cast will get on like a house on fire. Even WizKid himself just literally steals his scenes he's in. When you see him on the little bike, when he's like, "Excuse me, is this the Psychic Circus? Is it like here?" And that woman's like, "No, not another one, not another ruffian." Yes, I love the costumes. The music's incredible. For 1980s, it feels like Doctor Who was getting back on track. It looked a bit of a bigger budget compared to the previous Mel season. Yeah, it was wonderful. But before I carry on and continue, I'm going to go over to Aden. What do you think of the journey back in time to the Psychic Circus?
Right, so here's what 10,000 word essay. Yeah, sorry, I can't finish the joke. So here's the 10,000 word essay on why I think the bus conductor robot's the best character in the story. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to do that. But I know, right? It's devastating. Like he needed to be protected. God rest his robotic soul. But all seriousness though, like I did find it like to be a really fun story, like especially like in the scenes like with the ringmaster just giving his little raps like whenever he's just introducing somebody, and like it's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like corny, but it's like the best kind of corny. If that makes sense. Just like it's like enjoyable corniness. Like they're just like this is so like of its time, but I can't help but love it.
I also feel like that corniness is like so quintessentially like just circus stuff. Like circuses are just a bit kind of corny and everything in terms of like how they've got to like hype up as like, and now you'll see what you've never seen before and whatnot. Like, yeah, love that.
So we're going to go on to yes, Raven. I see you were just talking a little bit to Aden before I got kicked out. So I'm aware that you're a massive fan of the Psychic Circus, a bit like WizKid himself. But for you, how do you find this story that's come from a great season that's just been kicked off with the Daleks? You've got things like the Cybermen. How do you find like the greatest show compared to like the rest of that run?
See, I feel like this entire podcast has I should thank that I feel like I've paid you to do this episode specifically on Great Show in the Galaxy, because like this is my favorite Classic Who story. Like and it's the first Classic Who story that I watched. So maybe there's a bit of like favoritism and like
maybe a slight bit.
Maybe a little bit.
Just a
teensy bit. Because like how old would I have been? Maybe like 16 or something. And went on Amazon just like classic Doctor Who and then was like, okay, whichever one has the best cover I'll get. And it's like, oh, a cool clown and everything on the front, and that was enough for me. So yeah, like I fucking love Great Show in the Galaxy. Like it introduced me to my favorite Doctor and companion. It's like very modern in terms of how the story's told as well, and like in terms of building up, still the Doctor faces bigger threats and is more kind of manipulative and conniving, even though he's also a clown. So like Sylvester feels like the most new Who Doctor, and that's very, very present in Great Show in the Galaxy. It's also like I didn't catch this on the first time watching it, but Aden and I have chatted a little bit about this as well. That gets discussed a little bit in the special features on this. That like it's quite a meta story, that it's kind of about like the state of the show itself at that time.
Yeah.
In that like the Psychic Circus kind of representing like, you know, Doctor Who, that it used to be, it's past its heyday. It's not as good as it used to be. And it's on like at risk of being cancelled at any second by the gods of Ragnarok. Sorry, Michael Grade.
And the rest of the BBC higher ups.
Yeah, we want more. And so
don't play games.
Yeah. So like it's such a fucking good story, and it has like possibly the best stunt in all of Classic Who, with Sylvester walking away from an explosion that like nearly burnt his fucking back. It's so good.
Yeah, it's the literal definition of cool guys don't look at explosions. They just turn around and walk away.
It's the coolest shot in all of Classic Doctor Who, in my opinion. And like, especially because I didn't have the context going into that story that Sylvester was quite a manipulative doctor and stuff. So like at the beginning when they're in the TARDIS and he's just clowning around, like he's dropping puns every 2 seconds, but like he's clearly trying to like push Ace to go to this circus because it's stuff that she's scared of, that ties into her wider arc of like that will be picked up in like Ghostlight and whatnot as well, where it's like he's putting her in challenging situations that she'll be uncomfortable in to like train her up. So it's just it's just really, really good. It's just the best classic Who story. And because it's only 4 parts, it doesn't drag or anything either. So it's amazing. Love it.
Yes, and as I say, it's got heart. It's one of the funnest stories of that run because obviously they were trying different things out with Sophie and Sylvester compared to the previous season with Bonnie and Sylvester, which technically wasn't his fault because obviously he did inherit all of Colin's scripts. The only one, from my understanding, that became Sylvester's was Dragonfire, was the only brand new script that season. Everything else was for Colin. So under this run, though, with Greatest Show, like things like you're not expecting, this is where the dynamic of New Who really is born, is with these two. And I think what I loved about this story the most, as I was talking a little bit about earlier, no cast member feels like their roles were invalid. Like Flower Child had a huge presence even after her demise in the story because it affected Bellboy. You've literally gotten the whole cast that really get on well. I completely forgot that psychic woman. It was literally in a relationship with the ringmaster, and they were basically really fond of each other. Their demise was brutal. WizKid's demise was brutal. Like, so you get the ashes on the floor and you see the glasses. I think this is the type of story where, to me, for classic, this is when they were trying to turn it back round to make it like, oh, we've had a bit of cheese, we've had a bit of stuff that hasn't been working, so it's time to get the serious back into Doctor Who. But not what they tried at the end of Tom's run, but it felt like it started to work more with Sylvester.
Yeah, it's like putting the Who back into Doctor Who.
Yes,
anyway.
I've got to say, the moment for me that is a big standout moment is how evil Captain Cook is. And then he literally remembers that Mags is from Vulpana. And then he literally demanded for the moonlight to appear just to turn him into a werewolf because he didn't want to be the next one in the ring.
That's such a good cliffhanger as well. Like, with the makeup for Mags and everything, like that was really well done. And Sylvester just cowering away. Top tier cliffhanger.
Yes, and to me, that's why she is a memorable character. And that's why I love that Big Finish got to do more with Mags, because obviously you wish there was more of the character. And I'm so glad they did things like the Monsters of Gotcroft, but up to an Alien Werewolf in London. Please bring Mags back for more. But no, what I've also loved about the Psychic Circus, like revisiting it, do you remember the tidbit at Spearhead where they basically said the fruit they were given was absolutely disgusting from that old fruit lady?
Corn and custard.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what it was while watching. I was thinking, wait, I remember they mentioned it, but I was like, what was it?
I think it was sweet corn and something else, but custard. They had to be forced to eat it.
Yeah, it's no fish fingers and custard, that's for sure.
You can see clearly that it's sweet corn as well. Like it's looks rank.
It looks disgusting.
And that's why when we were discussing what they said in the panel, it made it funnier watching the episode back, knowing there was an actual horrid thing they were eating. Like when Sylvester's like, "Yes, delicious, madam," and keeps trying to lie through his back teeth. I think the comedy in Greatest Show is just unbelievably funny. It's well timed, but then you start to see Darker 7 come out when he's fighting the gods of Ragnarok because Ace isn't there to watch him. So it's like the Master Manipulator is coming out a bit more as the season's going on without realizing it. What was I going to say next? Oh yeah, so we talked a little bit about earlier that we might have positive and negatives with the episode. I will jump in and just say the best highlight for me before going into any. The best highlight and characters for me was just, I think it's been the whole story. This has been not a disappointing cast. Everyone was used well. I think the best character, though, obviously would have to be for me. This is a challenge because I love the Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I think the best one would be the Chief Clown, because for me, the chief clown is like he's thriving in the utter chaos. He loves when people are dying, and especially when he will not turn anyone away from the psychic circus. You've paid or not, you're getting in. You're taking part in the ring. He's thriving on the utter destruction that's going on within the circus. I think, yeah, I'd say chief clown, and I'd think the worst, Captain Cook. For the obvious, like he's just a horrid guy, but he's played by a wonderful actor, and that's what makes him a standout. He manipulated a teenager to his death just to get out of the ring. But going over to Aden, what do you think? Positives and negatives?
Yeah, right now I'm just now you got me in that thought train about Captain Cook just being absolutely evil, like almost basically evil, like. Because he's basically like that stereotypical like captain, or he's like, oh yes, I am just gonna have my tea while Mags does the work, like uncovering that big robot, and like he goes on about like his what's the word I'm looking for, like his adventures, like he's had before, like I remember this time I was in so and so and whatnot, and it's just like you think that with him he'd be like, oh yes, I am truly brave, but no, he's like an actual genuine coward. Like as Matt said before, like he was willing to let like WizKid like go on before him just so he didn't have to go on, and just let WizKid die, and then also got the moonlight effect on the stage, like so Max could turn into a werewolf. So that he didn't have to go on either. And like, if I do like that, like how he was written, it's just like so like evil, like even though he's thinking like, this is jolly good. I am being the absolute hero that I am. Oh God, that just like stereotypical British accents. Oh dear, but yeah, yes. And also like. Yeah, I know I mentioned this before, but I'm gonna say this right now. Like, I remember like when I watched the episode, like, and just seeing like the bus conductor robots, like this is gonna sound weird, but he, like, honestly, like the design of the thing, like especially the head, like looked so goofy, but it's just like kind of just horrifying, just thinking like when I think it was like when Flower Girl was like at the bus, and then you just see it like creeping up behind her, and then just reach down and like kills her. Yeah, I can remember that was pretty good. And then later on, that actually like you actually see it, and then you're like, oh my God, like that's so goofy, but
it's like got a little Lego person head.
Yes,
like...
yeah, basically, it's like and then he gets rebuilt, and then you're like, yes, he lives. He must be protected at all. Oh.
You were doing the rewatch, was it like last night? And you put in the chat, you were like, yes, my boy must be protected at all costs. I was like, I don't know how to tell him.
and I was like, tell me what. Oh.
It's like, yeah, bus conductor robot is not long for this world. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm not crying. I got something in my eye.
Aden, just before we move on to Raven, I did ask, did you have any negatives with the episode, or do you think it's perfect enough to stand on its own?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's perfect enough to stand on its own. Yeah, I genuinely can't really think of anything negative. Like any sort of negative thing that happened, it's like kind of like more of like a mixed up with a positive. Just be like, yeah, it's like got some imperfections, but it's like one of those things that you just can't help but love.
Yeah, the only negative you got from me was Captain Cook, but that's not because he was
it's just because he's an actually well written, like evil character, like that you just love to hate.
Yeah, he was the most awful part of Greatest Show, but that's because the actor was so brilliant at being like dodging out. But I just wanted to know one little tidbit about him. Why now did he keep getting one of those pots of tea from, like, on all of his travels? That's the one thing I never quite understood. Like,
Wait.
has he got a portable TARDIS on him where he's just pulling out teas bigger on the inside than the out of his pockets?
Who knows? But hey, that's just a theory. A Who theory.
Yeah. And speaking of theory, the person we're back to our biggest fan of like the greatest show in the galaxy is Raven. And so you do have a lot of love for this episode. So do you have any negatives or any positives that you've not yet discovered that you want to get off your chest?
I mean, there's so many like positives for just because like I haven't really mentioned like the full kind of supporting cast, like, and it has been mentioned by like Aden and whatnot, but like and yourself, Matt, that there's quite a few like different kind of side villains in this, like, and considering that the gods of Ragnarok are the main actual overarching villain and their presence is felt throughout, but you don't really properly see them until it is the last part, isn't it?
Yes, because they are throughout as that family, but then they get revealed in the last one.
Yeah, just like, Daddy, I want ice cream.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, shut up and eat your popcorn.
It's like, even though, for example, like the Chief Clown's like presented quite often as like kind of the main villain that's seen throughout the story, but like he's as much of a victim of them as the rest of them. Like he's just like feeding them more people in order to survive longer, because like he can't get out of it either. Like he's part of the circus that they're needing. So like, there's a lot to love. I think the only sort of negatives, well, there's one like behind the scenes thing that everyone knows about, that like that Ian Reddington, who plays like the Chief Clown, like got like twatted on the head by like when the jail cell thing comes down, the like, what is it, pork cutlass, is that how it's phrased? And like shattered his teeth or whatever.
Yeah,
that's a pretty negative thing, but you wouldn't know that unless like, you know, you watch even behind the scenes or go to a convention like Spearhead Live that we went to and heard these stories. But the only other thing is that like the Doctor's plan in terms of actually like defeating the gods of Ragnarok is kind of a bit like bullshit and non-existent. Like, as in, so
I think he just pulled it up out of thin air.
Yeah, bear with me, like, walk with me on this, right? So, like, the Doctor, the whole time, like, clearly he doesn't know that it's the gods of Ragnarok to begin with. Like, I'm usually like, I'll give 7, like, okay, he knew what the villain was to begin with. He clearly didn't fucking know, because, like, otherwise this story would have been resolved way sooner. So he's figuring out, he knows there's something wrong with the psychic circus, and he's, like, investigating, but doesn't know that it's the gods of Ragnarok to begin with. What was his plan in terms of like getting that medallion down to him? Like, he seems to just like expect that, oh, perfectly timed to land on this sword that I pull out my fucking ass. Like, where does that come from? Like, the 7th Doctor can just do that now. Like, he can just produce magical swords because you know, Sylvester McCoy is magical, and I choose to believe that. But where, like, how does he know that? Isn't it? Is it Ace that kicks it out of Captain Cook's hand? It's been a bit since I watched it, but like, it gets like kicked out of someone's hand, and then the medallion goes down into the gods of Ragnarok like arena, but he's like perfectly waiting for it in time. I'm like, there's no way that the 7th Doctor can plan all of this perfectly, but you know, the rest of the story is so amazing that you just sort of go along with it. But I do remember actually one positive bit that I forgot to mention is that we get all of like Sylvester McCoy's like great physical like stuff. Like, he was like a good like comedic physical performer before he was Doctor Who. And so it's just like, hey, Sylvester, if we just film you doing like circus acts for like half an hour and just like vamp, just kill time, could you just do that for us?
Yeah, we got to actually watch him do magic. Like,
Yeah. On that point, I believe that this episode was based around knowledge about Sylvester being a busker before he was Doctor Who. So I think that's kind of why it was all that tricks and stunts he was giving out, the juggling. I forgot one of my favourite scenes is him and Mags when they were busting out and they just knocked the clowns out with those two clubs and they were just like, yeah, you've just been clubbed, and they just like walk out of there like nothing happened, while the captain was like, can you come with us? And he's like, no, this is a part company, toodaloo. And it's just like, okay. So you knew he was going to dob them in when they got back in there.
Yeah,
it's like it's the only one left in the cage. They'll be like, oh, you're up next, and then he'd be like, oh, I know where the Doctor went. Why don't you get him instead?
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions today. Let's just say about that. And that was so funny because Sarah's like, yes, I fought you time and time again. I've known all about the gods of Ragnarok. How? They were just created for this episode. Stay tuned for the audio.
I do love that. I feel like it's obvious that Greatest Show is such a classic story in how many prequels and spin-offs and sequels and stuff to that story that have come out in like expanded media. Like which story is it that's it's a Big Finish one that's got the master who won't be named,
funny enough, which is a prequel and a sequel.
Yeah. And then there's obviously how you said with like Mags like spinning out that character. And then there's been the musical stuff, which is Children of the Circus, that's come out not that long ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I remember there was also the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Stephen Wyatt, who wrote this episode, he wrote the Psychic Circus prequel and sequel at Big Finish, so he had a lot to say with like where the characters were before the Greatest Show, and obviously for 7 it was afterwards, so he knows all of their fates. So. But unfortunately, he can't meddle with the timeline because then you're changing what happened there that day. So he couldn't really intervene too much.
I still need to listen to that one, but I do want to. So
yeah, same here. Yeah, because I remember mentioning this to you, Matt, earlier, because I think the only one in that trilogy I've listened to is Subterfuge with the monk.
Yeah. It's the only time the Master's been involved with the Psychic Circus because obviously he wasn't in the original story.
Yeah, I feel like the Master would have dragged down. Like, that's the other thing is, like, it's such a... For me, anyway, I feel like it's a pretty iconic story in Classic Who, but it doesn't have, like, any of the usual, like, returning villains or anything like that. And, like, due to the nature of the characters, you can't really, like, bring them back into New Who, really. Maybe Gods of Ragnarok? Maybe?
I'd have to say... Out of the 2 stories this season, the strongest was Remembrance for the returns compared to the Cyberman story and Silver Nemesis. But I will say things like Curse of Fenric, Greatest Show in the Galaxies, it goes on, things like Battlefield, like the latest stuff with 7 without the returning monsters. It's like he holds his court as well as the greatest doctors without them. It's more when it's with the returning monsters, it kind of bogged down 7's era, apart from Davros and the Daleks.
Yeah, except for Remembrance. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I quite like Survival. I mean, that's kind of a bit of my
yeah, but that's
because it was my first 7 story.
Greatest strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it was a panto only.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aden.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I think that's probably one of the reasons I like Survival, because it's like Ainley's like toned down. Like I'm more like kind of like serious in that story. I mean, then again, we're just getting sidetracked now.
To me, that was his best Master performance since Logopolis, when he actually was properly playing him before he turned all like over the top and overboard.
Yeah. I know that it's like it's off topic, but like I don't know. I never really rated Survival as high as other people, but. I don't know. Different tastes. I've never really liked On Set on Earth. Well, I've never, like, I don't know. ones that link back to Earth and stuff like are always sort of my least favorite Doctor Who. And I know that like a lot of it takes place on the Cheetah Planet, but like, for example, like that's actually something that I quite like about Greatest Show is that what are the other one in season 25? So Remembrance, Silver Nemesis, Happiness Patrol, and this, right?
Yeah,
So,
season 25 in a nutshell.
Yeah. So apart from like Happiness Patrol, did Happiness Patrol come after this or not? Do we?
No. Greatest Show is the last in the season because it went Remembrance, not Greatest Show. Remembrance, Happiness Patrol, Silver Nemesis, like Greatest Show.
So is this then the last story in Classic Who that solely takes place on an alien planet?
Believe
season
so.
26 has
the next season with like it's a full Earth season with like things like Fenric and Battlefield and Ghostlight.
Yeah. The closest like it comes to it is Survival that has a mix, but it's still like pretty
primarily Earth
based. Yeah. So
because it's
I don't know. I
Cheetah
think
Planet mixed with Earth. Yeah.
So I think that that's another thing that kind of biases me towards like my love for Great Show because I always like. I love Doctor Who when it goes to different places and it's not just tied down to Earth, modern day, or something like that.
Can I say as well? I love the Fruit Lady. She's absolutely nuts in the story. Like, how on earth on an alien planet she got a horse in the midst of an adventure just killed me with laughter when Max is hopping over and she's stopping a whole car of hers full of clowns and she's like, "Oh, you people just don't own this planet like we do."
She has my favourite line as well, where she's like, "Is there no end to you weirdos?" I love that. I have quoted that many, many times with friends that have no context for it, just like out of the blue.
This is what the fuck are you talking about?
This is what I mean. This is why I think this is one of the best stories. Though Stephen Wyatt only did one episode, a bit like Andrew Smith before Full Circle. I believe when you've gotten a strong story, the whole cast are the main attraction. It works miles better. Even the supporting robotic clowns that had no dialogue were even menacing. So to me, that's a hats off and a great win when every character is the centerpiece rather than being in the background.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's got one of the best like supporting casts out of like any sort. Like I actually remember the names of them, whereas I'm like usually I'm like, oh, that you remember that character from whatever. Like,
I felt sorry for Kingpin, and then finally when he got his intelligence back, I was so happy he got it.
Yeah, what was he called before Deadbeat on the Kingpin?
Yes. That's what I mean. So, when I would took our trip back to the psychic circus, I'd have to say just it was a wonderful trip. To me, this is one of the best Sylvester and Sophie stories. I don't know. The ironic thing is, I think Sophie's fond of clowns, but Ace isn't. So it's nice to have that contrast when you've got actors who play parts when they love them, but they have to act differently. And that's what I loved about this season and this run, is you start to see in each story Ace is different in each one. Remember, she has a lot of fun whacking Daleks. It's about facing fears, and fears come back to haunt her in the later season with Curse of Fenric, with like going back to the tie into Ice World. It's great to see her development as a character as it goes on. I think Greatest Show is fun. It's cheesy, but in like a good way where you can just watch it any time and it's not boring. It's not a dull story. For me, do I think this is the worst story classic? No, I think this is one of the greatest overlooked stories from this season. Because
is
now,
it overlooked?
Oh yeah, I believe so. I've always seen people talk highly about Remembrance more than Greatest Show.
That's fair. I feel like I've got like such a skewed perspective. I'm like, what do you mean that not everyone is raving about Greatest Show in the Galaxy? What do you mean?
Like, what do you mean no one's raving about the bus conductor robot?
Yeah,
I think it's had more of a resurgence, as you said, due to the spin-off media and all. But I think on its own accord for years, I kind of think Greatest Show was just one of those who took it as it came. But now, since like things like the Psychic Circus, Children of the Circus, I think more people are giving a fondness to this episode, and it's helped since we've had the BBC iPlayer release. So we're still hoping for that Blu-ray collection one, hopefully, at some point.
Come on.
But yes, so I'd have to say this was a wonderful story. There is no faults for me. Every episode was not a drag. It was fun. You couldn't tell who was who. Like 1 minute, you were like, "Is this the villain? No, is this the goodie?" Yeah, and yet it's a great, simple plot. It's a fun plot, and it's one of the best stories that came out of the 80s of Doctor Who. Right, before we move on to wrapping up for this podcast, we're going to just sideline into one final. So, about to tie in with the Greatest Show, we all had actually met each other the other week at a convention called Spearhead of Whoniverse, which was celebrating Big Finish for the children of the circus, which had a massive reunion, as well as the time of the Greatest Show. So we'll talk a little bit about that experience. So for me, I've met Dee Sadler before and Sophie. I've never met any of the others, but they looked like they were having fun. Great to see Ian Reddington. Jan, who played Whiskin, it was his first convention, and it was great to see him laughing his head off and having a lot of fun because he quit acting, funny enough, after this episode. So,
Yeah,
what did he become?
Not a
A mental
statement
health
on the
nurse.
Greatest Show.
But yeah, so this was his final TV role, but seeing everyone there, Chris Gard, it was wonderful seeing them all in their element and seeing Sophie house the panel. But how did you two find it, seeing like the Greatest Show cast like on that panel?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and just I can remember learning quite a bit, like especially like when they mentioned about what was it like? Yeah, it was like this, like you know how we were mentioning earlier about like the stuff with like custard and sweet corn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember that was like new information to me. I was like, wait, what? Oh, that's disgusting. Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense in hindsight of the episode, but yeah, no, yeah. And also, like just in general, it's like I might go into like the other like non like Greatest Show thing as well. Like getting the pictures like outside like the '96 TARDIS like was really good, especially like with the guests, like including Paul, like India, and also getting to see Conrad in person as well. Like
choices were made, Aden.
Oh yeah, choices were indeed made.
Friend of the show, Conrad Westmaas.
Yeah, and
yes,
also
to Carries.
Yeah, if you're watching this, Conrad, hi.
Yes, but for you, Rachel, what did you feel like seeing all of them in their element? Because obviously it's the first time for you to see not only just Eva Shum and coming down from Scotland, it was see that greatest experience having them all together.
From Scotland. Anyway,
is that right?
I
wouldn't be kidding that.
Yeah, it was really good. Like the panel as well, like I really enjoyed, especially like for me, I knew a lot of the behind the scenes like stuff anyway, because like I'm fucking sad and have watched all the special features on the Greatest Show in the Galaxy, because of course I have. But like it was nice actually just hearing like that they have like kept in touch at least a bit and have like spoken after the show, because like I don't know, that's quite a cool thing for like a one-off like Doctor Who story, and that the cast were like that close and everything. And then when we got like the autographs and everything, so like I am not the most confident in person sort of person when going up to like guests and stuff at conventions, and I was like, oh, could you sign my copy of the novelization of Children of the Circus, please? And like I was about to like walk away and stuff, so like Chris, who played Bellboy in the story, started a conversation with me. Like pretty much all of them asked about like my tattoo and stuff, which was really nice because I'd only gotten it like a few days before. And like everyone was just really lovely. I didn't get to speak to Jan, but I did speak to the others. And like, yeah, it was just really nice meeting them and like being able to go back to like my favorite Classic Who story that was already my favorite Classic Who story, but then like be like, oh, I got to meet those people and like have a nice conversation and stuff. Like it just sort of like adds an extra bit for that story for me. So yeah, it was a good fun time.
I got to say, I did love it as well, the panel, but I did have to feel for Sophie when she was running up and down the aisles. Like, not only was she interviewing, she was literally running here. So here's this question, that's that question. I just loved how interactive it was. The cast were having a great time. I think, as I say, Jan was just laughing his head off. I think he walked away from being an actor. He had never seen any of them again until that day, because obviously Chris Gard was the one who got in there because they're really close friends. So for him to stay in touch with him, convince him to go out, hopefully that's the beginning of him doing more shows and like coming out to seeing more people who missed obviously the whole Spearhead experience. I personally think it was one of the most informative behind the scenes. I was dying of laughter when it sidelined into Richard Gibson from a lower low, literally would gate crash at EastEnders dressed as Air Flig, just to try to get in each week. Like you just see him in the Gestapo outfit, just like trying to get a pint in just so he could appear on camera because he was desperate to be in EastEnders. I love tidbits like that because you don't hear them often. So Doctor Who had a funny connection with a lower low, because back on Remembrance of the Daleks, they had like the fire alarms go off, and the whole of lower low cast came in from next door when the fire alarms were going off. So they literally just met them all during their break. So here's Sylvester with like the cast of like a lower low having pictures with them while the Daleks were outside, like being taken down and just waiting for them to resettle for the shot when the alarm was going off. And I love things like that, and for me, it was wonderful. Even as I say, the only thing that was a downside for me for Spearhead, but that was nothing to do. It's because when the ticket numbers were quite late, and like, okay, we've just got to rush you a bit now. I felt a bit like, oh, this is a bit awkward because I have a few more questions for half of these people. Couldn't get them answered, but it's one of those. Didn't take away the fun day, but it was wonderful. Tonight was the first time I've seen The Greatest Show in the Galaxy since over a year ago when I last did my rewatch, and it's just each time it feels like a treat. I know people say, oh, sometimes when you do chronological, you should watch in order. To me, this actually feels like a standalone story. You could easily get a new fan to watch this without needing the backlog.
I'd not watched any Classic Who before this. I was just like, that looks cool. Watched it and like got it and everything, which I would recommend anyone who's not watched it before. Just
if you don't know about regeneration, you don't know the concept of it, and you're worried about the backlog, don't be. This is a perfect story to be introduced into Doctor Who. It's not lore heavy. It's nothing like Trial of the Time Lord. It's nothing like the War Games, the Timeless Child, the Time War. It's just you go in, you can just have fun with it, and that's the best way to approach this episode. Is you just have fun with the Psychic Circus.
I always take Doctor Who similar to how Stan Lee described comics, in that like every comic is someone's first comic, and I'm always like, every single episode of Doctor Who is someone's first episode, no matter how weird that is. Like my first full episode of Doctor Who was Doomsday. That is not an ideal starting point, but it worked, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe Greatest Show in the Galaxy will be.
Just as long as you didn't start with Necromantia.
Oh God! Don't get me started. Maybe one day we'll get to a review on that, but not right now, because otherwise I'm just going to go on a hinge rant for the next. Not Evil Dalek Cell on a hinge rant for the next hour.
I'll get you a sick bucket that day.
Thank you. I'll probably need that for Time Warp Genesis 2 when I eventually get to that in the 20th of Never.
I was checking your calendar for the 12th of Never. I see you have full bookings of stuff you're not going to be doing.
We'll make that 5 then.
Yes. So we've come to that portion now where we're basically about to wrap up because we've had fun. we hope you've had fun revisiting the psychic circus. So, yes, if you're afraid of clowns, again, apologies for any of that. There's a little disclaimer on that. What if you're terrified of clowns? This podcast is not for you. But if you aren't, please
The
come
biggest
in and join us.
clowns.
Yeah, come in and join us again because we are the clowns. Okay.
Yeah, we're all a bit mad in the nut house.
We're all
Oh yes, here's another clown from a different one. Well, sorry, whatever it is, the multiverse, slipped into Mr. J. So on that bombshell, so it's a good night for me, and that's good night from the entire cast. So I've been Matt. I've been your host again from Tales of the Whoniverse. So next up is good night from Aden. Good night, Aden.
Yeah, thank you all again for watching, and as always, don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Tales of the Whoniverse YouTube channel. And
Yeah,
also,
very-
yes, Queen, slay.
You were very Scottish with the subscribe.
Oh, is that right? I wouldn't have keen that.
And it's a good night from Raven.
Good night. And thank you for listening to the most Scottish Doctor Who podcast.
And the most Scottish, yes, Queen Slay.
Yes.
Aye.
Bye.
And on that note, it's time for the titles and good night.
Hello, this is Kerry's, and you've been listening to the Tales of the Whoniverse podcast.